See, that's one of my favorite words, more. Because when you start tapping into uninterrupted compounding interest, the only thing your money can do is be worth more the next year, and the year after that, and the year after that.
We could customize these to literally fit whatever that situation looks like and whatever that future looks like. And not only is it benefiting you today and in your lifetime, but for generations to come. And I don't know anything more powerful than that in life.
This is something that I think opens a lot of people's eyes because it really shows them what they thought about money isn't really how money works. Welcome back to another wealth webinar where we teach you the truth about how money works, and holy crap, do we need the truth right now. What we're going to do today is we're going to teach you all about a concept that I learned about over a decade ago, a concept that I largely can attribute to my success financially. It is a very simple and easy concept that involves changing one thing and adding one step, but I'm going to take you back to the beginning and teach you the fundamentals of what we call the infinite banking concepts, pioneered by the late R. Nelson Nash. But what we're going to do today is we're going to do this lesson in a way where I tell you stories, and I'm going to use real life stories. But before I do that, I got this thing I wanted to read because this, I think, sums it up better than just about anything. So put your thinking caps on, get ready. Here it goes. What if you could get all the money back for every purchase you've ever made, and you could create wealth through the debts and expenses that you already have? If you heard that, would you be compelled? I mean, how could I create wealth through my own debts and expenses? Well, continuing on, if you're like most Americans, you've spent your entire adult life paying the banks, paying your creditors, and paying expenses. And at the same time, most of you at one point or another have watched your retirement funds drastically fluctuate in the markets, and you've also watched your legacy do the same. You've been taught to give up control of your money, and you've been taught to do that at your expense. You've literally been shown that that's the only way, and you've also been shown how to assume all the risk in doing that. You give up control, but you also take on all the risk, and it's costing you your financial freedom. So today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how every single one of you can take back that control, how every single one of you can pass some of that risk on to somebody else or mitigate that risk through different steps that you can take that mitigate risk without you having to work harder, longer, or ever take on any additional risk. That's what we're going to cover today. But I got to take you back almost a decade ago. About a decade ago, I met a man, okay? And I met this guy at an event, and his name was Mike. He was speaking on stage with another guy named Greg when me and my wife were at a big seminar, and I'm never, ever going to forget what Greg said on this stage. Greg, because this is a real estate convention, Greg said the ultimate in real estate is being the bank. So I found myself out in Utah. Back then I was still snowboarding and professionally snowboarding. So I was in Utah riding, and I remember Mike lived in Utah. Now, up to this point, I had developed a relationship with Greg and Mike. Mike was lending me and my wife money for some of our flips. So I called Mike up while I was out there, and I said, "Hey, Mike, I'm in Utah for a few days snowboarding, but I got a deal I'd like to show you." I said, "Can we meet?" And he said, "Sure, meet me at Cheesecake Factory downtown." So I did. I met him down at Cheesecake Factory, and I showed him the deal I'm going through as we're ordering our food. And I just said to Mike, I said, "So Mike, how do you lend all this money?" Thinking there's some lesson here, something I could learn, some way I could know how he became his own bank. And without even flinching, Mike said to me, "I lend from my own private bank." Didn't even think I was a financial advisor up to this point of 14 years. So I think Mike just thought I should know what he's talking about, but I didn't. But I played off like I did because, you never want to show your weakness. Like, dude, I have no idea what this guy is talking about. I said, "So Mike, you're a private bank, like you have a bank. Why are we here at Cheesecake Factory is what I'm thinking. Let's go to your bank. Like we could do this whole deal from your bank." And he says, "No, I don't actually have a bank. I mimic what banks do. I learned the secret of the wealthy, and that's what I do." And I said, "Tell me all about it." So he begins to tell me what his private bank was. Now, just follow along with me as I write this on the board. He said his private bank, okay, I'm just going to put private bank here at the top, because that does sound pretty cool, right? Like, how many of you in the chat right now would love to have your own private bank? Put I in the chat. I bet you all see a lot of I's come up in the chat. And it just sounds cool, doesn't it? But if you didn't know what your private bank did, you probably would never ever create one. So when I asked him about his private bank, he said, well, first thing he said, I get guaranteed. He gets guaranteed interest. How many of you want guaranteed interest? Well, some of you might actually be saying, well, I get guaranteed interest at the bank. I got a CD. I'm guaranteed to make this interest rate for, a year, 2 years, however long your CD is. But does anyone know where you can get guaranteed interest for your entire life? Well, that's what Mike said. He didn't just get guaranteed interest, because when he said that, my financial advisor mind started thinking like yours. Must be a CD, but he said it never changes. So he said the guaranteed interest he earns never changes. And he goes on, and he said, in every single year, I get a dividend. So I'm thinking, okay, is this a dividend paying stock? Is this an ETF, a mutual fund? Maybe he found a mutual fund or ETF that I've never heard of that pays interest plus dividends. Then he got me on this one. And he said, and the guaranteed interest and dividends grows tax-free. I mean, this is starting to sound like just something that's too good to be true. I mean, come on. Guaranteed interest that I get the same rate for the rest of my life, dividends, and then also they grow tax-free. So the first thing I start thinking, okay, well, he must have something, because I was smart enough as an advisor, he must have something in a Roth. So I literally asked him, I said, is this your self-directed IRA? And he said, no. So I crossed off Roth. And he kept going on, and he said, my money's protected against judgments and liens. Okay, then he continued to go on and tell me more things, but the most important thing I remember, and this is where I want to start today's conversation, is he told me, Chris, when you ask me to borrow money or anyone else asks to borrow money, I basically can use all of the money in the account, but I never interrupt the compounding interest that I earn on that money. So, in other words, he was earning compound interest, okay, which we all know is very important. And as an advisor, I know this to be one of the most important things, but he was earning uninterrupted compounding interest. So what does that mean? Very simply put, and I'll just draw it because I'm very visual in the way I do things. You got money in this private bank. I'll just write PB like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So what he was basically saying, he puts money into this thing. Money comes into the private bank. And then he takes money out and he lends that money to me and other people on real estate, which was I'll never forget it, he only lent in first position. Okay, so that's how he loaned. And I think his was like 15%, 2% upfront, 13% or something like that. So what he said is, he said, the money that's in my private bank, when I take that money out, I take it out as a loan. And I'm like, okay, you own a bank. So of course you're taking loans from your bank. But he said, when I take the money out and I give it to you, and let me just use a number of 100K. It was more than that, but it was 100K. If he started with 100K in his private bank and took 100K out, most of you would think there's zero money left in his bank, right? You think, oh, Mike gave me all of his money like a regular bank, but that isn't what he said. Mike said if he's got 100,000 in the account, he still earned guaranteed interest plus dividends, tax-free on all of this money, even though he had just given it to me and now I'm paying him 15%. This is what he told me. What would be the first thing all of you would think if somebody told you that, and this is the very first time you'd ever heard it? Well, you'd probably think what I did. This is nonsense. This is not even true. There's nowhere that I have ever seen as a financial advisor that pays guaranteed interest, dividends on a tax-free basis, that's protected against judgments and liens, and provides uninterrupted compounding interest. The dude can give me money from his private bank without stopping the flow of interest and dividends on all of his money. Too good to be true. This is a scam. I literally thought Mike had been bamboozled by somebody and they told him this thing that didn't exist. He went on and said, every time when I pay him interest on this, so let's just pretend the interest is $1,200, okay? I don't know, it's actually probably $1,500 on that, okay? $1,500. He takes the $1,500 and he puts it back into his private bank. He basically was telling me that when he takes money from his private bank, he takes it as a loan, and then he takes the money that I pay him, his 100,000 working for him, and he puts it back into his private bank as a loan repayment. I mean, I understood banking simple enough to understand that is what a bank does. Banks take our deposits, but these were just his deposits because private, and they lend our deposits out at a higher rate. Then they take the interest or the rate that they get and they put the money back in the bank. That's how a bank works. That's why banks control our money. But in order for Mike to control his money, he did the same thing a bank did. So I had a lot of questions, but the first thing I asked him is probably the thing, actually, let me just pause. Out of everybody here, how many of you are here for the very first time, put new in the chat? If you're here for the very first time, put new in the chat. All right, so we got Michael's here for the first time. Well, we got two, Mike said old. We got Jay, okay, we got Lula, they're going quick here. We got Beth. Okay, so we got some new folks, and we got a bunch of people that have been here for a while around the campfire. So for all of you that are here for the very first time, like, this doesn't even sound real, does it? Doesn't even sound like there's anything that could ever do that. I mean, what bank, what institution, nowhere in Wall Street, where would they ever allow you to use your money without, without any interruption of the money that you're earning? You still get this interest. This is what I thought when Mike told me this. But the second thing you'd probably want to know is, can anyone tell me what it is you'd want to know? If you had just heard what I did, what would be your first question, Albert? Okay, a ton of videos. All right, Paul's cheating a little bit, so he's new here to the webinar, but he's watched a lot of my YouTube videos. So come on, play along here, folks. What would you want to know if you had just sat with Mike and Mike told you all of this stuff, told you what he's doing with his private bank? What would you want to know? Exactly, Michael. What is this? You would want to know, what is this wonderful place that Mike, this super wealthy guy, is using to lend me money? So that's what I did. Pretty logical thinker. I said, Mike, what is this private bank? And he said, Chris, you should know what this is. You're an advisor. This private bank that does all that is nothing more than a whole life insurance policy. That's what he said, super nonchalant. But he actually said a specially designed whole life, but I didn't hear that because the only thing I heard when he said that was whole life insurance policy. Now, I was an advisor. I knew exactly what whole life was, and I knew it would be one of the last places I would want to put money if I were lending money out on private real estate deals. I thought there is no freaking way this is what Mike just described, because a whole life insurance policy, as I knew it, and let me come over here. Yes, I knew it paid interest, but I never really thought of it because it paid such a low interest rate. Now, back when Mike told me about this, the guaranteed interest rate on contracts was 4%. A bunch of you on here have those old contracts, me too. Today, they're anywhere between 2 and 3.25%. So I just want to be transparent. This is today, but this was back when Mike did it. They paid guaranteed interest of 4%. As an advisor, 4% didn't even move the needle for me. It wasn't exciting for me. But then with dividends plus the interest, he was getting around 6%. So his dividend crediting rate was right around 6%. That got my attention because back when I was an advisor, the average return in the markets was anywhere between 7 and 10%, depending on the time frame. So now he was getting 6%, of which 4 of the 6 was guaranteed back then, and he was doing it tax-free. And I knew the tax equivalent yield. So if I was going to make 6% on money in investments that were taxed, I'd actually probably need to make 7 to 8%. So I'm like, this is amazing. But I never thought a whole life could be used this way because of one thing. What he described, and I want to preface this, what he described to me was he puts money in and immediately loans it back out to me. Puts money in and immediately loans it back out. Now, up to that point, I'd never seen a whole life, not once in my life, as an advisor, that you could put money in and immediately take that money back out. Period. Every whole life I'd ever seen, which I watch a lot of people's content, okay? A lot of people's content. And I watch a lot of haters' content talk about the infinite banking concept. And you know what they always say? I just heard one just the other day, and I just did a video, a rebuttal video. He said, it takes 20-some years to get all your money back in a whole life. That's what he said in this video. Now, knowing what I know now, I knew that was malarkey. But what happened back when I was with Mike is I actually thought when you put money into a whole life, you deposit money in. These are called premiums. Okay. And I knew it to be fact that it took at least 3 years to have access to pretty much any of the cash value in the policy. Because when you put premiums in, you're going to get a cash value and you're going to get death benefit. But the way that I understood whole life, regular whole life, is it took 3, sometimes 4 years to have any cash value. Mike was telling me that he puts money in and immediately in the first 30 days, he had access to a large percentage of his cash value. Not 100%, but I think he didn't describe an amount, but back then it would have been about 60%. Today we can get them up to about 80, 85%. That struck me as very concerning and also very strange because I'd never seen it before. But then I said to Mike, Mike, teach me how to do this. Show me how to do this. He had just showed me that there is a way, because he's clearly doing this. He's making money twice on the same dollar. Okay, so if he's putting money in, and let's just, pretend he's making 5 to 6% on the money, and then he's loaning the money back out, the insurance company is charging him interest. Let's just call it 5% for today. And that's just the arbitrary number that I'm picking out, 5%. But if he's making more than 5% and paying 5%, he is indeed making a spread. How do banks make money? Banks take your money, they take your deposit. So how banks work is we make money, we go out and we work for it. This is our hard work. We then take it to a bank and we do a deposit into the bank. The bank now has our money in their control. The bank then lends that money back to us to go out and buy things like cell phones. So I exchange money for the phone. I exchange money for a house. I exchange money for that car. I exchange money for this cool coffee mug with animal on it. That's all we do is we exchange money. But the whole while, the bank is using our money and lending it back to us at a higher rate. So if a bank pays you 3% interest on your savings deposit and lends it out to somebody at 6%, they make a spread. Mike, when he explained this, said the same exact thing. He's making a higher interest rate with dividends than what he's paying in interest to the insurance company. Okay, this is the insurance company interest, hypothetically using a 5% number, making a spread. But remember one thing, because if some of you were to do this, let's just do some simple math. This is just an example. If you make 5.5 and you pay 5, how much do you make in a spread? 0.5%, right? So let's write 0.5%. Hardly enough to even get excited and get out of bed for, right? But you see, it's 0.5% in that example. But if your money, your 100 grand is earning 5.5%, next year you don't have 100 grand. How much do you have? What's 5% of 100? Wouldn't that be $105,500 if I'm doing the math correct? So next year, because you earned 5.5%, and all things considered, I'm just doing gross return, not factoring in cost of insurance and commissions and all that, but just showing you a compounding interest. If you earned 5.5 and you had 105,500, okay, next year you're earning 5.5 on 105,500. Is 5.5% of 105,500 more or less than $5,500? It's more. And the next year, what happens? The same thing. We add and compound onto that again. So now it's more again. See, that's one of my favorite words, more. Because when you start tapping into uninterrupted compounding interest, the only thing your money can do is be worth more the next year and the year after that and the year after that. So one of the fundamental things that I need everybody to understand, and it doesn't even need to include any interest numbers. We don't need to factor in any numbers. We can just know that it's going to cost you an interest rate to borrow the money. You're going to be paid an interest rate plus dividends on your money, and your money is going to earn on all of it, even when you use it. That's called non-direct recognition. All you need to know is that you, too, just like the bank, can make a spread. Hence, everything we teach and everything we always talk about is BYOB. You will be your own bank. Which means if you are your own bank, you will control your money, which is not the case today. And you will make money twice on the same dollar over time. I showed you one spread, so we'll call this spread number 1, but there is a spread number 2, because over here, when Mike lent me that money at 15%, if we just did the same math, let's say it cost 5% to borrow, and we subtract 5 from the 15, Mike is making 10%. So that is spread number 2. Now, you're never going to factor out the 5% interest to the insurance company on both. It's going to be one or the other. And I usually show it. Either you're going to look at the return on the whole life minus the interest paid. That's a spread. Or you're going to look at the return your money is earning by working for you out there. I'm just using a private lending deal. Okay, at 15 minus the interest, the cost of your money. This is where people always get hung up, right here. And I know if some of you are listening, this is where you're getting hung up. So what we're going to do real quick, because I never really do this, is we're going to talk, we hit 3 interest rates. I just said 3 interest rates. Can everybody articulate back all 3 interest rates for me right now? Anyone? There are 3 interest rates I just mentioned, and it's very important that we hit them. Okay, first interest rate that I mentioned was the guaranteed interest the insurance company pays. Okay, I'll just put earned. Now, this is contractually guaranteed, which is a cool word. Contract guaranteed. It's right in your contract, your interest rate. And let's just use 3.25. I'm just picking on one of the insurance companies. That's one interest rate. What was the second interest rate? Stephen, does anyone put in any?
No numbers yet.
Well, Hope's got it. The loan interest, right? The insurance company charges interest, but I'm going to write simple interest. Stephen, what is the interest rate right now for some of the companies we deal with? They're charging on loans?
Right around 5%.
Yeah,
I'm
so let's
seeing
just
around 4.8 to 5-ish right now.
4.8 to 5%. Can any of you go to your local bank and take out a loan for 4.8 to 5%? Anyone? No, right? You can't. I personally don't know a single bank that will lend at 4.8 to 5%. If some of you do, can I have their number, please? I don't know any. So we already know the insurance company will lend money cheaper than the bank, and that is because the interest rate that insurance companies calculate or charge on the loans is not tied to prime. Most, actually all banks that I know of, tie their interest rates to the overnight rates or the prime rates, okay, set by the Fed. Insurance companies tie their interest rate to the LIBOR bond index, which is a lot slower moving and a lot different than prime. So therefore, at least as I do this training today, we definitely can borrow much cheaper from an insurance company than we can a bank. Okay, so that was interest number 2. And the third interest rate was your money working for you. Now, I want to dissect this. Money working for you, okay? In the example of Mike, his money was working for him by him lending me money. He lent me money at 15%. Remember that? So I'm just going to try to put numbers. So the guaranteed interest you earn, 3.25 from one company we deal with. The interest rate they charge to use your money, and that's what a lot of people don't like. So I'm going to put a nasty face over here, okay? I'm going to put an angry, mad face over here because people probably think, well, that's my money. That was my savings that I put into that policy. And now the insurance company is going to charge me interest to use my own money. How many of you were thinking that? Just put yes in the chat if that's what you were thinking. And you were kind of like, this is stupid. I got to pay interest to use my own money. Hogwash. How many of you were thinking that? And if nobody was thinking that, then great. We're really doing good here. But there's got to be somebody that was thinking, I don't want to pay interest to use my own money. If I put money in the bank account and I take the money out of the bank doesn't charge me money to borrow the money out or to take the money out of the account. It's my money. I get to use it. Tess said in the old days, but nobody else wanted to admit it. But I know somebody was thinking it, and I get it. You put money into the account, you take that money out, and now you got to pay interest on your own money. That sucks. But would any of you care at all if you put money into a bank account? Let's just pretend a hypothetical world. You put money into a bank, and that bank paid you 5.5%. You went back to the bank the next day to take a car loan, and the bank gave you a car loan at 5%. The bank's paying you 5.5%, and the bank charges you 5% for the car loan. Would you keep your money in the bank and use their money at 5% when you're earning 5.5%? Of course you would. Would you keep your money in the bank if it was earning 6% and they charged you 5%? How about 7% and they charge you 5%? That's even better, right? It doesn't matter. All of you would be thinking, hell, I would use the bank's money if it was anything cheaper or anything less. in a percentage than what I'm earning. That's just logical, right? Every single person would do that. They would never take their money out of the bank if the bank would loan them money at a lower rate than what they're earning in the bank. You would never take money out of the bank. You would always borrow if the bank would give it to you. Folks, that's what we're talking about here. You see, the only variable is that the dividend, so I can't put that because I was only talking interest. The dividend is not guaranteed. However, every insurance company we deal with has paid consecutive dividends, never missed one since the day they were open. And most of the insurance companies we deal with, which is 5 of them, have paid dividends longer than 100 years. Actually, all of them have paid dividends longer than 100 years. Most of them are around 140 years, never missing one. Do some math. In 140 years, what's happened? Well, there was this little thing called the Great Depression. Yeah, they paid dividends every year during the Great Depression. Oh, then there was this other thing called there was a bunch of recessions in the 80s. I don't remember the name. There's Black Friday. Yep, they paid dividends straight through there. The dot-com crash. Yep, they paid dividends there. The Great Recession. Yep, they paid dividends there. The pandemic. No, they didn't pay dividends in the pandemic, did they? Yep, they paid dividends then. They have never, ever not paid dividends. So dividends plus interest, which is called dividend crediting rate for most of the companies we deal with, is anywhere between 5 and 6%. So right there, out in front, every one of you probably in your mind or in comments was saying, if the bank would pay me 5 to 6% and lend me money at 4.5 to 5, you would take money from the bank all day long. Actually, let's just make this 5.2 because that is actually. Craig, where is Lafayette now? I know they just increased dividends.
I think it's 5.3-ish. Yeah.
Okay, so 5.3. All right, somewhere around there. So 5.3 to 6. So it doesn't matter. This is greater than this. But see, here's the thing we don't usually understand. These are the 3 interest rates we're always talking about. The thing that we get caught up on every single time, and the only thing that we start not liking the sound of, is the fact that we've got to pay interest on our money. Because it is your money. You're not borrowing the insurance company's money. It's actually your money you're borrowing back. But we get caught up because we got to pay interest on that. But remember, it's simple interest. And what kind of interest are you earning on your interest and dividends? The guaranteed interest plus dividend. You're earning compounding interest. But not just compounding interest. You can take the money out and still earn the same rate on your money without interrupting it at all. So it's uninterrupted compounding interest. So this is the most important math that you need to understand. Compounding interest always trumps simple interest. It's just mathematics. Craig, maybe in a little bit, you could show them a calculator to show them the difference and how every year your cash value, the money that you put in that is called cash value after you make your premium deposits, is going to compound up. The insurance company charges you the exact same interest every year because it's simple interest, which means it's not so much compounding. It's actually going down because what we're going to do is we're going to take this money that you're earning by having your money work for you, 15% in that private loan, and I'll talk about a few other ones in a little bit, and we're going to take that money and we're just going to use this money to put back, we're going to put it back into our bank, we're going to put it back into the policy. Where else did you think it was going to go? Did you folks really think you were going to take this interest that you just earned? Do you think Mike took the interest he earned on me and put it back in a traditional bank? Heck no, he put it back in his bank because his bank's paying a higher interest rate, guaranteed. And his bank is allowing him to earn uninterrupted on a tax-free basis. So when he puts the money back into his bank, the policy, okay, the whole life policy, and effectively that money that's going back, that $1,500 a month that I explained, is paying this loan down because that's the way it works. Every dollar you put back into the policy, you put it back as a loan repayment. Because why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you pay the loan back? Now, folks, let me ask you this. Anyone understand how a home equity line of credit works? You go to the bank, you apply for a home equity line, doing it right now, and they give you the equity in your house in dollar values, and you get to use that money, right? So when you take that money out of the home equity line of credit, and then all of a sudden you put some of it back in, how much money do you have available? Every penny you put back in, right? If I take 10 grand out of a home equity line of credit and I put 10 grand back in the next day, don't I now have 10 grand to use again? Right, this is the same way. So if I take $1,500 that someone else paid me on a loan and I put it back into the policy as a loan repayment, I'm paying the loan down, but I'm having complete and total control and access to that $1,500. I lost nothing. I didn't lose access to any of that money. At the end of the year, the insurance company is going to charge me interest, but do I care if the insurance company charges me 5% when the insurance company paid me 5.3 or 6? I'm saying the same thing over and over because I'm trying to drive it home. No one cares if they're paying interest on money but earning a higher rate on their money. No one cares because you're using someone else's money to pay the interest, which in this case, you're technically, after a couple of years, using the insurance company's money to pay the interest back on the loan. So then really, this just comes as a component of not stealing from your bank. If your money, that 100 grand in that example, makes $1,500 at 15%, that 1,500 has to go somewhere. So what do? We put it back into the insurance company as a loan repayment, meaning now in our policy, we have another $1,500 to use. The next month, we have $3,000. The next month, well, you can do the math, $4,500. And it just keeps going and going and going. And all the while, the one thing I did not yet explain is one of my favorite things, and it is just this. What is that? Craig, can you tell me what that little bugger is right there?
That is the inverted yield curve.
It is, but really it's just an X, isn't it?
Well, it is just next. And I think, yeah, you're going to be talking about something with interest rates here in a minute.
Well, I'm just trying to show the relationship that I'm explaining. When you put money back in the policy, you are paying a loan down. So if I took a loan out for 100,000, okay, and I pay down 1,500, which is the interest I earned on that 100,000, I just put it back. So now I don't have a $100,000 loan with the insurance company anymore. How much do I have? 100 minus 1,500 bucks?
Yep.
Yeah. So now I have, what would that be? 98,500. Now let me ask you, Craig. First I was paying, and I'm just going to use 5%. The insurance company's 5%. First I was paying 5% on $100,000. How much is that per year?
5,000.
5,000. Okay, but now I'm only paying, after 1 month, I'm paying 5% on 98,500. Is that more or less than $5,000?
That would be less.
Okay, but hold on. But my $100,000 that's earning this guaranteed 5.3 to 6%, that's more after a month, isn't it? So what I'm trying to say with this, and I'm trying to mathematically show it, hopefully I'm not confusing people, is when you do this, when you are the bank and you perform the banking functions, the loan balance is going down, which means when the loan balance is going down, you're paying less. It's called the APR. Your APR, annual percentage yield, or I'm sorry, rate, not yield, getting them confused. Annual percentage rate is going down. So every year that you pay the loan down, if it's simple interest, you're actually paying less money to the bank. But your interest is compounding. So every year your interest is going up. One is going up, one is going down. That's all I was trying to say. Sorry if I confused that. These are the basic fundamentals that I'm trying to get across with the infinite banking concept. And all we do is we go round and round. But you see, let me now go back to that Mike story. Mike could not teach me about the infinite banking concept because Mike learned it from this guy named Brent, the same guy that I wrote this book with, Mapping Out the Millionaire Mystery, Mr. Brent Kessler. And Mike said, Chris, just call Brent. He can teach you how to do this. So I did. I called Brent on the way back to my hotel from that meeting with Mike. And I just said, Brent, I just met Mike. You got to teach me this infinite banking thing. And what did he say? He said, have you watched the 90-minute video? I said, no. Now let me ask you in the chat, folks. We got 102 people here. How many of you have watched the 90-minute video teaching the infinite banking concept? Put I in the chat. Just keep them coming. Great. Well, I watched that same 90-minute video that every one of you that have not yet watched it can watch either on my YouTube channel or easier, just go to Be Your Own Banker or chrisnaugle.com. So BeYourOwnBanker.com or chrisnaugle.com. We'll put it in the chat for you. Okay. If you haven't watched it, just click once you go to those websites and watch the 90-minute video. That's it. I watched the 90-minute video and it changed my life. And that's when I started doing this. But you see, I didn't start like Mike did. Heck no, I did not start lending money because I had no money. So how did I start? Well, let me go back to what I opened today with, which what I opened with was literally the back of this book. And it says, what if you could get all the money back for every purchase you ever made and create wealth through the debts and expenses you already have? So let's fundamentally talk about the first thing that I did. And I'm actually gonna cheat a little bit here, and I'm gonna do something fun. I'm actually gonna do this with a diagram that we have saved, I hope. Brand new board. Just hoping I got all the stuff in here.
Can we do a Venn diagram?
A what?
A Venn diagram.
A Venn diagram?
Yeah, Venn diagram in honor of our new candidate. Hey, Chris, real fast, or everybody listening while Chris is pulling that up, I just want to get a real fast poll because we have a special thing coming up next weekend. So if you have a policy with us, an infinite banking policy with the money multiplier, just put, or you're currently in underwriting for one, put a 1 in the chat box. And then we have a special offer for all the ones. If you don't yet have one, put a 2, and I'll show you how to get this special offer. So just put 1s and 2s real fast. All right, great. So those of you that have a policy with us right now, and those of you that don't, I'll show you what you can do to get this. If you like what we've been talking about so far today, and I saw a couple of people over there asking like, hey, can you show us this with Craig's calculators and can you kind of lay it out? Well, next weekend, Friday and Saturday, all day Friday, all day Saturday, we're going to geek out with Chris, Craig, Brent Kessler, Hannah Kessler, myself, and a couple others for 2 full days, over 10 hours. Just geeking out, talking advanced strategies and advanced techniques for the infinite banking concept. And that's where Craig is going to spend a lot of time. And we'll show you some of this in a second. I just wanted to kind of lay it out in case anybody has to hop off early. So we're going to spend a lot of time getting into like, why should I buy an infinite banking policy and invest with that as opposed to doing what Dave Ramsey says and buying term and investing the difference? What does that look like in the real world? Well, we're going to break out and spend at least an hour showing you exactly what that is next weekend. We're going to show you why it makes sense to do everything that we talk about mathematically. So if you like this, you'll see the link over there. So for all the ones, you guys have member pricing. So it's $47 for the whole weekend. We give you the recordings, everything like that. So make sure you join us, interact. It's live. We'll have a lot of fun if you can make it there live on the Zoom. Otherwise, watch the recordings. You'll get a lot of value. Now, if you are not a member yet, if you do not have a policy yet, and you want to get member pricing, we will honor that for you, okay? But what I want you to do is schedule a call prior to next weekend with one of our money mentors. So if you've watched the 90-minute video, which I'll share in a second, schedule a call with one of our money mentors before next weekend. Even if you don't start a policy yet, I want you to have that conversation, start planning, and then we'll give you the, what is it, $20 off to get the member pricing. Fair enough for everybody? So I want everyone here on here to have the opportunity to join us next weekend and get that nice member pricing discount. So that's what I just wanted to mention real fast, Chris.
And Stephen, as always, let's sweeten the deal because I always like people to take action. So I'm going to show a picture of a really cool shirt. You guys like this? This is one of my favorite older designs. This is one of the old BYOB shirts. You know, it's very patriotic and I think very right for the times. So anybody that signs up for the 2-day advanced IBC training today at the discounted price, you're going to get this shirt as well. We're going to mail you the shirt. So that means when you sign up, you need to let us know what size shirt you are and what address you want us to mail the shirt. And you can do that either, I don't know if the checkout has that, I believe it does, in the memo or the special instructions. Just put down your shirt size and your address, and we will mail you the shirt. If it's not in there, just email Shauna@chrisnaugle.com. This is for people that register today only. We got the wealth webinar that we're finishing, or that we're going to do today. And then we've also got the Ask Me Anything. So if you sign up anytime on any of those events, this shirt will be mailed to your door. So that shirt's $24 plus shipping. So let's just say it's let's call it $30 shipped to your door. Stephen, how much are the cost of the tickets discounted today?
$47.
Okay, not a bad deal. $47, but we're giving you a $30 value in a shirt. Not a bad deal for 2 days of teaching you this. Awesome. All right. Anything else, Stephen?
Hey, just one thing, Chris. before you go into that next diagram, do you want me to pop in and show the crowd the kind of how the policy is growing versus the loan interest?
Yeah, how many of you would like to see that? Remember I was saying, the difference between the simple interest and the compounding interest? You want to see the difference with that? Yeah, well, they already do. Definitely. Paul
All right.
wants to see it. Yep. Whoa, they all want to see it. Yep. Let's rock.
See-
This is something that I think opens a lot of people's eyes, Craig, because it really shows them, that what they thought about money isn't really how money works.
Yeah, so I think the place to start, and I don't know if you can see this okay, but this is just what we call a cash value analysis. So we've designed a policy where there's $50,000 going in as an initial dump in. So it's kind of like when you open up your savings account, you just drop some money in initially. So we're dropping in 50,000 and then every year putting in another 10,000. So what you're seeing here is at the end of each policy year, how much did we put in annual premium deposits? So by the end of year one, it's 60,000. And just like Chris was talking about, there's guaranteed portions of this and there's non-guaranteed. So these numbers in green, those would be what's in the contract and guaranteed. This would assume that the insurance company never pays a dividend, but they always have, but this is where your guaranteed portion's visible. And then everything in this lighter blue would be numbers that are reflective of not only the growth of the policy, but when those dividends are added into the numbers. So here's what I want to show you is if we're putting in 60,000 year one, you've got about 55,584. So there's no big secret here. It takes a little while for the policy to get to the point where it's performing to the point where you're getting more back than you put in. But Chris mentioned earlier on when he was an advisor, it would take 20 years to get all the money back that you put into the policy. In this particular design, that's happening at about year 5 and 6. Sometimes it happens at year 3, sometimes year 7. It just depends on the design. But by year 5, let's just say you're able to get all the money back that you put in. And looking at on a year by year basis, what we're looking at is if I put in 10,000, because of all the previous years compounding in year 3, I'm now getting more on a year by year basis. So I put in 10,000, I'm getting 10,433. So now I'm getting $1.04 for every dollar I'm putting in. So that's
a really important thing, and I want to preface that. So there's two ways to look at these. There's the way that most advisors would look at a whole life policy is that break even. And that one guy there was an Instagram video where he said it took 20 some years to break even. Like you're seeing it right here, the way we design them, it took this person 5 years to hit a cumulative break even. Now that's only important if you're going to put money in the policy and just leave it sit there. And if you just put the money in the policy and you said, hey, this is better than my savings account, I'm never going to use the money, I'm just going to put it in there just as an emergency fund, and I'm going to leave it sit. So after the 5th year, you're broke even, by the 6th year, you're break even, cumulative. Yep. But that means nothing when you're learning and using it for the infinite banking concept, because the infinite banking concept, remember, we're putting money in and we're immediately taking loans from the policy to send the money back out there to work, like I explained with Mike, making loans to me. Okay, so when you're doing it that way, the return you really need to focus on is the year over year cash on cash return. And Craig, as you were just starting to say, where is it that every dollar that I put in, I take out more than what I put in year over year?
That happens at year 3. So we've got right here, this cash on cash is 104%, which means in that year I put in $1 and I get $1.04 back. So that's the point.
I mean, just think about that though. How many of you would put $1 in the bank if the bank gave you $1.04 back? And would you keep putting dollars in if the bank kept giving you $1.04 back, but then the next year the bank gives you $1.14 back for every dollar you put in? How many times did you go to the bank and put $1 in? As fast as you could do that, right? And the next year it was $1.19 and $1.23 the year after that, $1.27 for every dollar. That's compounding interest in its finest hour. And I just wanted to point that out because that's what matters for the infinite banking concept. The cumulative break-even point really doesn't mean anything to us except for that one or two, the one or two clients that are putting money in and they're just saying, hey, this is a better savings account. Oh, and I wanted a death benefit.
All right. So let's take this to the next level. Now, let's just assume that at year 2, we're going to take out 50,000. The reason I'm using year 2 is I want you to look at these numbers and the projected growth. So By the end of year 2, we've grown $8,898. Then year 3, 10,000, then 11,000. So let's just say 8, 10, 11, we're getting close to 12. We're not talking about using the money yet. So now let's take that 50,000 and let's put it to work at, say, 15%. Well, that whole sad face that Chris drew earlier, we have to, consider the loan. So I'm going to jump over to a loan calculator. And essentially what we're going to do is we're going to put in the loan amount of 50,000 at year 2. I'm not going to pay anything back. So I just want everyone to see kind of what the loan cost is. Well, at 5%, my loan interest cost is 2,500. Okay, so there it is. 2,500 is my loan interest cost. How much did my policy actually grow that year? 8,898. So right there, we just take the difference of that 8,898 minus the 2,500. There's spread number 1, right? There's our growth and the cost of the loan, just at spread 1. Okay, does that make sense? But Chris, what did we do with that 50,000?
We lent it out, I think, in your example.
Yeah, so we lend it out, and let's say we lend it out at 15%. So what is that? 50,000 times 15. So now we're making $7,500 on that 50,000. Well, let's just say that we're going to put some of that back in. Let's just call it $600 a month back into the
we're going to
loan
go
repayment.
the rest, and we're just going to have fun with the rest, right?
Yeah, we'll just take, we can even do 500 if you want. So we'll just take the rest.
Yeah, let's
we'll just
show
go
the
have
example of people having some fun with their money working for them.
So what happened is now we, instead of a $2,500 charge, loan interest charge, we bought it down because we're buying that principal down over time. So our spread just got bigger because we put more back into the policy, and now our loan interest instead of 2,500 is 2,300. So what is that? 2,338 divided by 50,000. So now our loan interest instead of 5% was 4.6.
Yeah, because you're buying the rate down.
Yeah. So let's not forget about all the spreads that we're dealing with. One was the interest minus the growth of that 8,000. That's, spread number 1. But then we also have the money that we're making in the investment at, say, 12 to 15%. So every year that just keeps getting better and better and better. So hopefully that was helpful. I just wanted to show kind of how the policy is growing, what that looks like with the loan. So
that's perfect. Craig, can you keep that one handy? Because I think we're going to use that next.
Okay. Yep. So I can stop sharing, and then you can jump into the diagram and I can pop back into this.
Breaking news, this just in. Are you sick of having your money lying around not doing anything? Well, we've got the solution for you. PrivateMoneyClub.com. Back to you, Chris. Perfect. Before I do that, folks, like Stephen was talking about the 2-day advanced IBC training, like today I'm just hitting just a few basic examples. I wanted you to understand the fundamentals of why we do what we do, why we use the whole life policies versus using another vehicle. There is no other vehicle that can give you that uninterrupted compounding interest with all those other benefits. Okay, this is the only one that can do that. Craig just showed you the numbers, but next I'm going to show you how I'm just giving you my stories. Like, right, I met Brent. I did my very first IBC policy, my first specially designed and engineered whole life that I was going to use for the infinite banking concept. But I used mine to build wealth through my debts. But in this advanced training, we're not going to get into the boring stuff like that, okay? That's bare bone basic stuff. In the event, and Stephen, jump in and help me, we're going to do something actually we've never done before. And Craig started talking about this, but this is literally going to go down in history. So all of you are going to take part in something that I promise you will go down in history. It will be the equivalence of just a drastic change for Mr. Dave Ramsey. So for the first time, what we have done and what Craig has done is he has literally shown how mathematically buy term invest the difference is not better than buying a whole life policy and taking loans and investing in the same thing. So literally what we're going to do is we are going to debunk buy term invest the difference, but we're going to not just do it in opinions. Okay, we're going to do it mathematically. We are going to show you, Craig is going to show you for the first time any of you will ever see it, why buy term invest the difference is not better than putting your money in a specially designed whole life and using it to invest in the same damn thing Dave Ramsey or any other buy term invest the difference person is telling you. So we do it apples for apples, time frame to time frame, no differences, just raw math. Okay. We didn't miss anything. This has been through the grinder. I don't know how many times this has been through the grinder now. Fact check after
I've been working
check.
on this since, I don't know, since May. It's been review, wake up in the middle of the night. No, I need to change this. But yeah, here's kind of the way I look at it. There's always going to be a critic out there that could probably find something. Well, you didn't look at it this way, but I think we did a pretty objective review of this whole scheme.
And we did this really because there was a YouTube video that was put out by some really great guys and on a popular show. And, I messaged them and I said, hey, if I can mathematically prove to you that buy term invest the difference doesn't beat what we teach, would you be willing to hear it? And they said, yes. Well, it took us a while to mathematically prove it. So it completely covers all the objections that they could have had. We've done that. And anybody that attends this today, you are going to see that for the very first time. This summary, this study that we've done is going to turn into a book. So that's one thing. But what else are you going to learn? You're going to learn about how to use the infinite banking concept to supplement a seasonal business. You're going to learn how to use it for equipment financing. You're going to learn how to do it to provide guaranteed income at retirement. You're going to learn how to do it and using it to fund a franchise. Okay, maybe you want to buy into a business or a franchise. We're going to talk about corporate uses for the infinite banking concept. We're going to talk about how to use it for major expenses and major purchases you're going to do in your life, like weddings and medical expenses and just life events. We're actually going to show you, any of you that have come to the experience events have seen this, but Brent Kessler is going to show you how he uses his policies, which he's got lots of them, and uses those for private lending and what the impact is. He's going to show you his numbers. Okay. And then we're going to go into some what ifs, and we're going to really, really dissect the underwriting process, which I know sounds boring, but we're going to do it in a really fun way that I think you're all going to love. Stephen, did I miss anything?
No, it's a pretty full. I mean, there's so many rabbit holes you can go down with this stuff at the end of the day. And so it's so hard on these, quick YouTube videos, 20, 30 minutes, or even these 90-minute webinars that we do to really get in deep in all the different topics. And so that's why, I think we did this a couple of years ago and it was such a hit. And it's so hard for us to take the time to spend 2 full days just on infinite banking. But, from demand, so many people have asked us for this and we decided, hey, let's just do it for 2 full days, give you all of our best stuff. Basically for free, at the end of the day with the t-shirt offer and the price and everything like that, just to cover some of the costs that we have to put it on. But it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to go in deep. So be ready to have your mind blown and keep those recordings because you're going to come back to those time and time again into the future. I can promise you that.
All right. So let's get back into it. So after I had met Brent Kessler, after I had heard this whole thing from Mike, I was intrigued. I started my first policy, but I want to preface, I didn't have a lot of money. And I remember doing my first policy. I did it for $1,000 a month, and holy crap, $1,000 a month was a lot of money for me back then. And for some of you watching this, it might still be a lot of money. I went out on a limb, if you will. And I said, I did this, but I only went out on a limb because I knew 1,000 was a lot, but I also knew that if it got to be too much, I had the ability to reduce it down to the minimum of $400. So that's why I wasn't nervous. That's why I went out on a limb back then. I did $1,000 policy. My first policy was with Security Mutual, just in full transparency, but I knew that I had flexibility so that if I got in trouble and couldn't do the 1,000, 1 month, I could always revert back to going down to the minimum. So there's a minimum and a maximum, because otherwise, if there wasn't that flexibility, I probably wouldn't have done 1,000 a month. I'm giving you my real story. And initially what I was interested in doing, see, back then, over 10 years ago, I had lots of debt. Now I'm just going to give you one debt. I had a debt with a bank called KeyBank. Awful bank, but I still work with them for some stupid reason. And I had a line of credit with them. And let's just say the line of credit was roughly, I think it was roughly about $20,000. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I owed them $20,000 and I was paying, I remember, $287 a month. That number I remember. So what I did is I saved $1,000 a month into the policy. And how I would do this, my goal was to pay off this key bank. But ahead of that key bank, I had some credit cards. Now, at this point, I had a bunch of credit cards, but they were all small balances. Like one was $2,000. Larissa had some, like, I think she had a Sears card. She had some other small balances. So we had all these like really small credit cards. So what I did, my initial goal was I wanted this one gone, okay? But I had a bunch of other small ones that I never really thought about paying back. So maybe we were paying 100 toward that one, maybe 200 a month toward that one, and maybe 150 toward this one. I'm just giving you kind of roundabout numbers. I don't remember the exact credit cards I had. So how I did it is I built a plan. Folks, we will build every one of you a plan. It's called a map. We actually have a debt blaster. It's evolved a lot, but back then it was called a map. So when I did this, we came up with my map and we put my debts in order from lowest to highest. So those credit cards were put in first. So 2,000, 3,000, and then 5,000. And then I'm going to go right over here to the key bank $20,000 one that was at 2.87%. That was, I think, 9% that I was paying them on that unsecured line of credit. So here's how it worked. Every quarter, I did this quarterly. I put $1,000 a month in. So every quarter, I would go in here and I would take a loan. And I'll never forget that first quarter, they were on it. His name was Jonah. Well, you probably all know Jonah Do, but he was running the mapping team. First quarter came, we structured the first loan. It was $2,000. Okay. I took the $2,000, ran it into the loan, deposited in my segregated bank account. And all the segregated bank account is, folks, is just a second checking account. Yeah, it's really that simple. You go to your bank, you set up a second checking account, and you do nothing other than banking in there. So now the first deposit into my segregated account was that loan for $2,000. I took the loan for the $2,000 and I paid off that credit card. Okay, this credit card here. But I didn't stop there, because what the mapping team did, what Jonah did, is he said, all right, we were paying $100 a month to that credit card that we just paid off. What we're going to do is we're going to set up a loan repayment, okay, for $100 a month to go back into the policy. So now every month, okay, I'm putting 1,000 in, and I'm now recycling and recapturing. So I'm just going to put R&R, recycling and recapturing $100. So now how much money do I have to use the very next month? $100. Because I repaid the loan by $100. I took a loan for $2,000. I repaid $100. So I have $100 there. Plus I put 1,000 in. So let's say I have, I don't know, $600 in the first year of the 1,000 to use, because I'm depositing 1,000 every month. It was a 60-40. So now that debt's over. Next quarter, what I do is I take another loan, but now I have more money to use in the policy. I have more money, not because I saved more. I'm still saving $1,000, but I'm now putting $100 extra in every single month, because that was $100 that I used to pay to that pesky credit card. Now, folks, don't fault me on the math. I'm just giving you examples, okay? The math's going to be a little bit off, but I took a loan for $3,000. So this was the first loan. Second loan is a $3,000 loan. I'm how far into this? I'm 6 months or so into this, because every quarter I did this. Took the $3,000, paid off that credit card. That gave me an additional $150 a month, because I don't have to pay that credit card anymore, but I'm going to pay myself back. So I take that $150, I increase my loan repayment by $150. So now I have $250 that I'm keeping every month, plus I'm still saving $1,000. You all know where I'm going next, right? The next quarter, I took $5,000, paid off the $5,000 credit card. Now I had the $200 that I was given that. So I add 200 to the 250. I'm now recapturing $450 a month. I didn't work harder or longer. I just took money back that I was giving away to these credit cards. And on I went down the road, paying off loans, paying off car loans, buying new cars. And eventually I had 20 grand in there that I paid off this key bank, and I added that $287 a month, and that came back over here. There is nothing difficult about what I just showed you. Nothing at all. I'm doing exactly the same thing I was doing prior to having this, except for I changed where I was saving money and I applied a process, which is this circle that you just kind of saw us doing here, which I always draw, of me taking loans from the policy, paying off debts, recycling and recapturing all the money that I was giving away. All the dollars are exactly the same. Same amount I was saving, same amount I was paying. Nothing changed in my life. It's not like I'm going out and having extra money every single month. I'm not. But what I'm doing is slowly, consistently, and persistently taking back control of money I used to give away, the money that used to leave my family forever. And now that money was mine to use. I did pay off all of my debts. Today, I'll fast forward to today. It's very different than what it was back then. Today, I use my cash value in all of my policies. I'm actually very happy to announce I just did Vivi's second policy yesterday. It just went in force. So I funded a policy, her number 2 policy. So now we got to redo Vivi Lucky Jeans. And that policy is $8,900 a year going into Vivi. So now Vivi has one policy for $5,000 a year, one policy for $8,900 a year. If any of you have ever seen Vivi Lucky Jeans, can you now think of how wealthy this little girl is going to be when she's older? But you see, she's going to have to learn this just like all of you are before she ever has control of her money, because I own it. And because I own it, I'm not going to give it to her until she's ready to get the money. So all I'm trying to explain, folks, is if you change one thing, where your savings goes first, add one step, which is this process, it doesn't matter what you do. Today, I lend a lot of money. I lend on privatemoneyclub.com, and I lend out anywhere between 12 and 15%. I buy lots of cars using my policies today. I've used my policies to buy copy machines for the business. I've used my policies to do renovations and flips. I've used it to buy flips. My gosh, I'm forgetting all the things, but just recently now we're talking about doing another policy for one of my companies, a company-owned policy. So we just keep expanding on how we do this. But remember, don't ever forget where I started. I started with going out on a limb to save $1,000. And the only reason I got out there is thinking, oh my gosh, if things get bad, I'm only committing to $400 a month. And look at me now. So I'm not trying to use my story in my example, but it's the only one I can tell it that much detail. And I can tell you that everything I just told you is exactly what I did, how I did it. I didn't have any breaks along the way. It wasn't like somebody just said, hey, I really like you. Here's a bunch of money, get this thing started. It was just consistent and persistent action. I've done other videos where I've showed my oldest policies, and I think you all, if you haven't seen it, should go back on YouTube and watch it to see how much those policies for every dollar I put in give me back. You wouldn't believe the cash on cash return. My one that I started in 2008, if I'm not mistaken, I think my cash on cash return on my last year's premium, I think was in excess of 80%. Now that policy is 16 years old. I did another one in, I believe, 2014, whatever that was. And that one I think is 40+% cash on cash return. Yours will do the exact same thing. Matter of fact, yours will probably be better than mine were, because those old policies, we don't design them the same way. We design them way better now. And we're going to go over, matter of fact, what I might do day one of the 2-day, and Shauna, if you're listening, write this down. At the end of the day, after we do Q&A, I might do a special session where I kind of go over the design of these policies. So for people that have not seen how we design these policies, I'll take you behind the scenes and show you the stuff no other agent wants you to know, because I'll show you how we reduce our commission through the way we build it so that you have a lot more cash to use in your policy. All right, so Stephen, what else do we, let's see, Hope, I want to hit a couple of these questions real quick. Hope said, sorry, going quick. Did the $1,000 include PUA? Yes, so Hope, in my policy that I did, you'll notice I said the minimum is $400, but I was doing $1,000. So just, I know a lot of people just don't, know this, but what that means is this is a 60-40 design. This is the Nelson Nash design. 60% of that $1,000 or $600. So let's see, I'll write it down here. 600 of the 1,000 went to paid up additions. The minimum, the 400, was the base. Okay, so the only thing that would ever be different than my original design is some of you might have a term rider. So then we would just have a term rider of whatever that cost is, but mine did not. Okay, that policy didn't. So that's a 60-40. And however it's designed will determine your minimum and your maximum. Your max will be what you tell us you want to save. So if any of you book a call with one of our money mentors, which I urge, if any of you are not already doing this and you want to see what this would look like for yourself, book a call with one of our money mentors and do that today. We'll put the link up. Book a call today. Listen, nobody's going to try to sell you anything. It's not going to be some sales pitch. We're just going to talk through your situation, and then we're going to show you how to solve your problem. And if we can solve your problem, we know something. We know that you will ask us to help you do that. That's how we do business, folks. So the call with our money mentors will never be a sales call. And if anybody on here has ever done a call with one of our money mentors and felt like you were being sold something, let me know. I'll send you a bunch of shirts. You're never sold anything because we're just going to solve a problem for you. But this is always how you're going to know. Like, I'll give you another example. Let's just say this $1,000 a month was a 75-25. Okay, what would you know to be? This 400 would be 250, and the P way would be 750. So that's how you know that that's a 75-25 design. So no matter how the design is, that's going to determine the minimum and the maximum that you can put into the policy. Great question. I went long on that just because I felt like it was important.
Is there a minimum time window to wait before starting an additional policy?
No, none. You could start a policy. Like I could start Vivi's policy, which just went in force yesterday. I just funded it. And I could start another one next month. As long as the human life value is there, that wouldn't be a problem. The insurance company might say, you know, how come you're doing another one? And I'll just say, whoops, I screwed up and didn't do enough in the first one, but it was already issued. So I just said, I'll take that and I'll do a second.
So also took my loans out and keep them out all year lending, any caution you'd offer towards not paying loans back immediately?
Yeah, mathematics. Craig, can we just do another exercise where we show Will exactly why it makes sense to actually pay the loans back from a mathematical standpoint?
Yeah, so I would also add that there's no requirement to pay them back in that year. So a lot of times what people are doing when they're using their money for investments, they'll cover at least the loan interest at a minimum per year. So you may not put back any capital back into your principal side, but you might keep all that out working. So did you want to go through another calculator or just kind of talk generally about?
Just real quick, if you could just show him one example of never paying the loan back. Okay, here's what the cost would be. And then show him an example of just, I don't know, Will, do you want to give us some numbers? Do you want to, in the Q&A, do you want to put some numbers up there? Like, you know, if you've been taking loans out and then you've just been keeping the money in the segregated account or in the bank, you're not paying the loan back. Can you just give us some numbers to use? Like how much did you take out as a loan? And then how much money are you just recapturing into the savings account? That would give us the ability, and we could actually just show it and show you the advantage of doing the way you are now versus the way that maybe you might want to consider doing it. Notice how I didn't say the way you should be doing it. I said the way you may want to consider doing it in the future. The only advantage of doing the loan repayments, like what I teach and what I do, is I make more money because I'm benefiting by paying the loan down and paying the insurance company less interest. I don't have to. But I'm literally a professional nickel and penny picker-upper. So because I'm a professional nickel and penny picker-upper, I'm always trying to find ways to pick up an additional penny and a nickel. And if I can take a little bit more money back from the insurance company, damn it, I'm going to.
Yeah. So I almost think that Will's use case would be a good one for what we call the gain projector, which would take some time to set up because we'd have to get Will's policy. And we can show... So Will, this particular tool, what it'll do is show you if you're investing at a certain rate, you know, not paying back loans, using the gains to pay back the loans. So there's a lot of what ifs we can do. But if he wants to see, so he's got premiums, policy in force 18 to get 105. So we can do a quick calculation on a $105,000 loan. Let's see here.
I just think it would be a fun thing where people could actually see a real life example.
All right, let me see if I can dig something up.
Putting you on the spot, I know, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's fine. So let's go back to the loan calculator, take all those out. All right, so I'm just going to put in 105,000 and we're assuming 5%. So here's what happens. Let's just assume, Will, that you have a $105,000 loan and you're not paying anything back towards the year. At the end of year one, you'll accumulate $5,250 of interest. Now, your decision at your policy anniversary would be, do you want to pay that or do you want to roll it on to next year? So you see how this loan balance goes from 105 to 110. It's because we're putting the loan interest on to that loan balance and then just continuing on. So now your loan interest at the end of year, the second year would be 5513. So just at this point, you're starting to accumulate loan interest onto your principal every year that you don't pay that loan interest. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right. So then if we just come back and say, well, we're going to put $1,000 a month into the policy. So this is essentially going towards principal. Now we can see the loan balance, instead of that 50 was a 52, or 53, now it's 49. But this is the effect of paying down your loan interest, or at least something towards your loan every year. So you want to keep, what I try to do is not let that loan interest compound on me. So I'd want to put in enough to at least cover that.
But I mean, you're only doing 12 months too. If you go down if you go down to 24 months, so then it starts really making a huge difference. And the thing, Will, that I'd always, beg someone to consider is, like, when you got 105,000 out, that 105 went somewhere. And if you're following what we teach, it went somewhere to work for you, whether it was paying off debt, maybe you bought a car with it, maybe you lent it out, maybe you bought real estate, but whatever one of those activities or opportunities you went into, it's creating money, additional money. That's your decision as to where that additional money goes next. I mean, you could blow it. Okay, you could save it in a bank account, or you could just put it back into the policy, as Craig's showing you, as a loan repayment. And if you do that, the only one that's the worst one is blow it, because then you don't have it. But if it goes into a bank account, it's accessible to you. If it goes into the policy as a loan repayment, it's accessible to you. So really, the difference between leaving it in the bank or putting it back in the policy as a loan repayment is there is no difference. It's dollar for dollar identical. The advantage to putting it back in the policy versus keeping it in a bank is the mathematics right here of how much interest you're saving by not paying the insurance company interest on that money that's just sitting in a bank account. That's the biggest factor to consider.
And when you put this 12,000 back into the policy, that becomes accessible to use again. So even if you need it for an emergency or whatever it might be, you can still pull that back out and use it.
And I think that's the thing a lot of people maybe, because when we make loan payments, Craig, I think what the problem is, it's really just conditioning and mindset. When we think of a loan, whether it's a loan from the insurance company, a loan to M&T Bank or Bank of America, like when we think of a loan, we think of a payment, and just inherently, without even really thinking about it, it's just subconsciously, we think that a payment is that money's gone. So we don't want to make payments, because we in our mind associate a payment as money that is no longer ours anymore. But this is one of those very unique, rare, not going to say exclusive, but rare times where your loan repayment, okay, is there to be used dollar for dollar. I mean, you're always going to have the loan interest charged on the loan. That's that's going to remain. But you can pick and choose how much you want to pay in loan interest on the money you borrow from your policy, and this is how you do it. And that middle column there that he was showing you, is the effect. It's pretty big over time, and you don't lose the liquidity of the money. That's the thing.
Yeah. And so what a lot of people don't realize is that loan interest is only paid at the end of the policy anniversary. So whether you want to pay for that or let it roll, anything you're doing throughout the year is going to reduce principal. So that's why we're seeing this interest rate changing, as we pay more and more or less into the policy.
Any questions, Will? Awesome.
All right.
We didn't want to beat that into a dead horse, but and no horses were harmed in this. One thing I do want to do before we wrap up and finish this up is I do want to just do what our attorneys ask us to do, and I want to read you this. This is a disclaimer. Any opinion expressed by me or my castmates is solely our own individual opinion and not investment or personal financial advice. This content is for informational purposes only, and this information should not be relied on for investment or other financial decisions. Nothing contained in this webinar is financial, legal, or tax advice. All right, so we got that disclaimer out of the way. And the other thing I just want to make sure I remind you all, if you sign up for the 2-day advanced IBC training, you get our patriotic BYOB shirt. So I don't think we've ever given this one away. We've given other shirts away, but this one's pretty badass.
I love that one. I have that one.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. One of my favorites. That's right, John. Yeah, and John said, this seems amazing. I've been giving away money for years. Didn't know I could implement my own financing. So that's probably the most powerful comment that's come in. And I'm not downgrading anyone else's comments, but just like listen to what John B just said. He said, this seems amazing. Okay, this is one of the first times he's seen this. I've been giving money away for years. All of us have been taught our entire life to give money away, and we think nothing of it. And then he said, I didn't know I could implement my own financing, or I didn't know I could implement my own banking system to take that money back. It is literally that simple. I don't know why this isn't taught. You're right, Paul, the blinders are off. It's so simple, right? There's like, sometimes people give us way too much credit for what we teach. This stuff, I mean, listen, I got a 4-year-old. I bet you by next year, when she's 5, she could probably explain all this to you. She's like, Daddy, it's just a circle. The money starts on the left side of the circle, goes over to the right, makes more money, Daddy. So I'm just going to write $2. And then the money on the right side of the circle comes over to the left side of the circle. Any questions?
Well, it's so cool because it's so simple, but at the end of the day, we can spend 10 hours getting so advanced with it because it's the infinite banking concept. There's just so many different strategies. And the great thing is every single person on here, your financial situation right now is different. Your goals are different. Your life is different. And so we could customize these to literally fit whatever that situation looks like and whatever that future looks like. And not only is it benefiting you today and in your lifetime, but for generations to come. And I don't know anything more powerful than that in life, especially when there's just mayhem going on in the world right now, multiple wars and political crap and everything else. All we can do is control what we can control in our lives for us and our families. And this is literally the ultimate way to do that. And I just love it, man. It's so much fun to talk about.
And Azir, sorry if I said that wrong, but Azir is what I kind of get that as. I brought up another good point. He made a comment, he or she made a comment. This loan from the policy is similar to a HELOC and velocity banking concept that you have also taught us. So I want to just kind of take that because that is an important thing. One other thing we teach a lot about is home equity lines of credit. So I just the other day, I have a lot of haters, should be no surprise to any of you, that basically just made a comment to me the other day is, basically, why would I ever do this when I got to borrow my own money back? That was the relevance. It was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. I'm going to put money and then I got to borrow it back at interest, which I've already dissected. But then he said, why wouldn't I, he mentioned a HELOC. So think of a HELOC. Everybody that buys a house in one way or the other, they buy a house, not just to, be a house for their family, but they buy a house with a mortgage with the intent of building equity. I mean, it's pretty simple. I mean, every person that buys a house eventually will have equity in their home over time. Now, let me ask you this. Can you just walk in your house, like open some magic door and say, hey, there's my equity. I'm going to take $100 out of my equity today. Is that how it works? No, the equity in your house is literally locked in the walls. Like you can't get it out. So in order to get the equity out of your house with nobody, I don't think there's a single person out there that would argue that real estate is not a good investment. Is there anyone here that does not think real estate's a good investment? Good. So if real estate's such a great investment and equity is a big part of why it's such a great investment, how do you tap into that equity? Well, you have to go out and you have to get a financial instrument called a home equity line of credit, or you could also do a home equity line or loan agreements. I think it's a HELA. So you could do one of those two. So now all of a sudden we get the equity converted into actual dollars, and we then get a checking account that we can basically use to take that money out. So we all understand this. Okay, these are checks. So now the equity in our house can be accessed through a home equity line of credit or a HELA, and we get a check. Great. Everybody understands that. There's nothing hard about that. And I can take this money, I can write a check to somebody. Okay, and we'll just kind of mimic a check here. There we go, sign it. And we can write a check to somebody for $50,000, and we can lend that money to them. So we're going to lend 50 grand, 10%, 12 months. Those are our terms. but we lend from the home equity line of credit. Stephen, just do the math. 50,000, 10%. What does that work out to be a month? I need the monthly amount. Should be able to do it in my head, but I'm getting tired. I knew it was a weird number, which is why I wasn't doing it in my head. So every single person out there, no matter who they are, no matter what they believe, no matter how much they've learned, knows this method, right? I don't think there's anybody that doesn't know that this could be done. Great. So now the 416. So now what is the average person going to do with this newly made $416? What are they going to do with it? What's that?
They're going to blow it.
They're going to blow it. But let's pretend we're talking to a slightly higher, like, knowledgeable person. Most people are going to say, all right, I made 416. I'm going to pay it back or pay some of it back to the home equity line, because they know that if they pay their home equity line of credit down, that money's available again, right? So let's just say, Stephen, do one more piece of math, 50,000. Let's just say we got a home equity line, I don't know, 8%. At 8%, what is 50,000 times 8% monthly? Oh, you're doing a 30 year. I'm just doing simple interest, keeping it simple. All right, Craig, can you just do 416 minus $333? This is the cost
83.
for us. What is it?
83.
$83. Okay. So this is the cost to use our money. This is our money working for us. This is our spread, $83 spread. Okay. And that's only at 10%. Everybody understands this, and there's a ton of people that understand and do this, and they do it lots of different ways. Everybody like this strategy? Pretty cool, right? So everything we teach is this. But what we teach is that this 50,000 was earning money the entire time. It was earning money tax-free, and it was protected against judgments and liens. That's it. I should start teaching that more often, because everybody understands that methodology of a home equity line of credit. And there's nobody out there, I think, at least I think, nobody out there that thinks banks are giving home equity lines of credit for free. And I don't think there's anybody out there that actually believes they can just go open some magic door inside their house and start pulling cash out. I think they all know they got to get some type of bank instrument that gives them access to the equity. But yet nobody out there will ever disagree that real estate is not a great investment. And they'll say that real estate's a great investment for one of two reasons. Number one, passive income, or largely the equity we build in the house, which all of us build equity in our homes by the simple fact of just paying the mortgage. So if you could do this, but now all of a sudden your house magically just started paying you interest on $50,000 of equity, that'd be pretty freaking sweet. That would be. And most people would say that sounds too good to be true. It's what we do every day, folks. That is the fundamental difference. So hopefully that makes some sense. I've never done, and just so everybody knows, I've never done that before, but I kind of like it. Does everybody like that? Did that click for anybody? Was there anybody that was kind of on the fence that just clicked for them? Or did we already have all of you there 100%? All right, yeah, I'll use that again. All right, Stephen, one last time. What is the offer that we made to this amazing group of 100 attendees for the wealth webinar?
Yes. So if you're an existing client, get the member pricing. If you're not an existing client yet, schedule a call first and you get the member pricing, and put in your t-shirt size and mailing address if it's different than your billing address, and the t-shirt size in the note section, and we'll get you a BYOB. Is that it, Chris, that shirt?
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry,
No.
I thought you were, no.
I got something different.
We'll get you a BYOB shirt and get that shipped out to you, and it's going to be an awesome few days. There you go. Perfect.
Perfect.
Put the link in.
All right. Hey, Deborah Brick, you were just talking about strategizing for the 250,000 HELOC. Set up a call with us. Stephen, can you email Deborah and give her your contact or somebody's contact about that? Because we've got lots of things we could chat about. But hey, I'm going to get to Robert's question in a second. I just want to do something really quick. I like giving stuff away. I just think it's fun. So what I'd like to do is, I got this shirt. Okay. This is just some of the stuff that we keep. It's straight out of Buffalo. I want to give this to one of you, but I want to preface, I've only got one of these, and this is a small. So I've got one small. So real quick, anybody that's a small, can you write small in the chat? Anybody that's a small?
Ooh,
right.
Burn. Got two smalls.
All right. So all I want you to do, anybody that just said small, I want to give you a shirt. So the first person, okay, the first person out of anybody that's a small that can tell me one of the insurance companies that we use to design these policies, I will mail this shirt to you. Go.
Nope. Looks like Lula got it.
All right. There we go. All right. So who was the first one?
I think Lula got it.
All right, Lula, I need your address. All right. This one is a a double X. So XXL. And it says hustle until they ask if you're hiring. So who on here is a double X? Oh, well, look, see, everybody's on to, see how fast people learn? Like they saw something get given away. I didn't even have to say it. They're already messaging XXL. All right. So Stephen, I'm going to have you give them a softball question. And the first person that answers it, we will mail them hustle until they ask if you're hiring. What's the question?
Oh man, when it comes to infinite banking, what is better to use and what should always be used? A whole life policy or an IUL? Hope said whole.
Wow. Here you go. This one goes to Hope.
Nice work,
You
Hope.
talk about a softball question. Everybody's like ready for these really, like they're putting their thinking caps on. They're getting out Be Your Own Banker's book. Like you're going to have something hard.
I was just waiting for someone to write IUL, and Chris has something special to send you.
Oh, I would. I'd have to go to the bathroom first and package it up, and then I'd mail that to you.
Make sure none of them, we're good. We're doing good here. We're teaching well.
I like it. All right. So last question we're going to hit is, unless there's something else in the chat, is Robert. Stephen, you want to give me Robert's question there? I got to get my glass. Oh, here they are.
What considerations should someone understand for taking out multiple policies versus one larger policy for the aggregate amount of the multiple policies other than commissions? Well, the commissions are relevant because that's going to be proportional to the size of the policy, no matter if it's multiple or the one. But yeah, so
easy. So Robert,
versus,
the answer to that question, like, multiple policies versus one large policy, it's always better to do one large one because each policy has a policy service charge that the insurance company charges, and it's anywhere between $50 a year and $100 a year. So it's not a lot. It's very low, but $50 to $100 per policy would be the commissions wouldn't change it because it'd be the same whether you did one large or three smalls. It would be that policy service charge. So that's the first easy softball answer. The second part would be the reason to do multiple policies versus one large would be you want to insure multiple people. So instead of insuring one person with a large policy, you might want a policy on yourself, a policy on your spouse, and a policy on your child, and you use the same dollars, but you solve 3 insurability problems. So now you got 3 people with death benefit coverage, all amounting to the same amount of cash values you'd have with one large one. Yes, it's going to cost you, let's call it, $300 extra per year to insure 3 versus 1. That would be the only other reason. All right. And we are a little bit over time, but folks, I can't wait to see all of you at the 2-day advanced. We've only done it one other time. It was a huge success, and all of you got a front row seat and some shirts and a discounted price. So please get your tickets, go back in, copy the link. And any of you that won the shirts, we will mail them. Just make sure we have your address. Hope I now have yours. So I will write that down. And with that being said, thanks for joining us for another episode of Wealth Webinar. And thanks to my co-hosts, Stephen and Craig. And Craig, thanks for playing ball with those, those very quick thrown at you questions. Appreciate it all.
You bet.
Thanks, guys.
You guys have a good one.
All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. We're putting up tons of them, but I think if you like this one, you'll probably like that video as well. Not only that, I've got a book that I created, Mapping Out the Millionaire Mystery, where we actually show you what the wealthy do in the game they play with money. I want you to have that for free. And if you want to know about all my new videos coming up, click that alert button. Actually, smash that alert button, and you'll be notified every time we put a new video. So we'll see you on the next episode.